They told you to be nice, smile more, speak softly, don't make waves. They taught you that your value came from how easy you were to love, how much you could give, how little space you could take up. And so you became her, the nice woman, the people pleaser, the one who said yes when everything inside you screamed no. But let's be honest, where has being nice gotten you? You've bent so much you can barely recognize your own spine. You've been there for everyone. Yet when you need someone, the silence is deafening. You carry their burdens, their expectations, their guilt, and still it's not enough. Because being nice doesn't earn you respect, it earns you exhaustion. It doesn't bring peace, it brings people who walk all over you. It's time to stop being the nice woman. They tell you to be nice, to be agreeable, to keep your voice soft and your opinions to yourself. And for a long time, you believe that this is the path to peace, to love, to being accepted. So you become the woman who keeps the peace at all costs. You become the one who says yes when you want to say no. You become the one who smiles through the discomfort, who avoids confrontation, who bends and twists to fit into the expectations of others. You become the nice woman. And while everyone else is comfortable, pleased, and content with how easy you are to be around, you're the one quietly falling apart. The truth that no one tells you is that being nice often leads to self-betrayal. It's not an innocent habit, it's a pattern that eats away at your identity, your boundaries, and your soul. Every time you silence your truth to protect someone else's comfort, you are betraying yourself. Every time you stay silent in the face of disrespect to avoid being labeled as difficult, you are betraying your values. And every time you overextend yourself for people who wouldn't lift a finger for you, you're sending a message to your own heart that your needs don't matter. What makes this betrayal so dangerous is that it feels good in the short term. You get praised for being agreeable. People thank you for being understanding. You're told how sweet and easygoing you are. And those words become addictive. You start tying your identity to how others view you. You start believing that your worth is dependent on your ability to be pleasant, quiet, and cooperative. But underneath all the praise, there's a growing void, a sense that you're disappearing, that no one truly sees you, that no one even really knows who you are because you've never allowed yourself to fully show up. You become afraid to express anger, afraid to disagree, afraid to take up space, because you've been conditioned to believe that doing so makes you undesirable, unlovable, or selfish. So you continue to give and give, hoping that one day all this niceness will come back to you, that one day someone will see your sacrifices and reward you with the love and respect you crave. But it rarely happens that way. Instead, people get used to your silence. They come to expect your compliance. They stop asking what you want because you never speak up. And slowly, the resentment builds. Resentment is the cost of self-betrayal. You start resenting the people who take you for granted, even though you trained them to do so by never saying no. You start resenting your relationships, even though you were the one who always compromised. You resent the world for not seeing your worth, even though you've been hiding it behind a mask of niceness for years. This is how bitterness grows, not from being too emotional, but from being emotionally neglected, especially by yourself. You were never meant to be a passive participant in your own life. You weren't created to simply be liked. You were created to be whole, to live truthfully, to stand tall in your boundaries. But when you choose the path of always being nice, you surrender that power. You hand over your identity in exchange for approval. And the tragedy is, most of the time, the people you're trying to please aren't even worth that sacrifice. They don't understand the price you're paying behind that smile. They don't see the internal war between your truth and your fear. They just know you're convenient, that you won't complain, that you'll keep showing up even when you're hurting. And that's the cycle that keeps you stuck, because the more you betray yourself, the harder it becomes to recognize who you are. You become so entangled in everyone else's needs that you'll lose touch with your own. Self-betrayal doesn't always feel like a dramatic breaking point. Sometimes it's subtle. It looks like saying it's fine when it's not. It looks like putting your dreams on hold for someone else's convenience. It looks like staying in a job, a friendship, or a relationship where you're unappreciated. Because walking away would make you look ungrateful or cold. And so you stay. You sacrifice, you justify, and you call it love, you call it loyalty, you call it being nice, but deep down, you know it's something else. It's fear, it's conditioning, it's survival. There's a dangerous confusion in the way people use the word kindness. They often mix it up with being nice, with being agreeable, with never upsetting anyone. But the truth is, kindness and niceness are not the same thing. Niceness is a performance. It's about being liked, about keeping the peace, about avoiding discomfort, even if it means sacrificing your truth. Kindness, on the other hand, is rooted in authenticity. It's about being honest, even when it's hard. It's about holding space for both compassion and boundaries. Kindness can be fierce. Kindness can be direct. Kindness can say no without guilt. But niceness is a mask. From a young age, many women are taught that their value lies in how pleasing they are to others. Be nice. Don't make waves. Smile more. Don't raise your voice. Don't take up too much space. And over time, this message is absorbed so deeply that it starts to shape the way you move through the world. You learn to edit yourself. You learn to swallow your anger. You learn to soften your strength so others don't feel threatened by it. You think this makes you kind, but really, it makes you invisible. Niceness is fear-based. It's driven by the desire to be accepted, to be seen as good, to avoid conflict. It's about what other people think of you. Kindness, on the other hand, is courage-based. It doesn't need approval. It doesn't seek applause. It isn't afraid to disappoint someone if that disappointment means staying true to your values. A kind person can stand their ground without aggression. They can speak the truth with love, even when it stings. A kind person understands that real connection is built on honesty, not appeasement. The problem with being nice all the time is that it turns you into a mirror for other people's needs, rather than a reflection of your own values. You start agreeing with things you don't believe in. You laugh at jokes that aren't funny. You say yes when your entire body is screaming no. And people think you're kind because you're so easy to deal with, but in reality, you're just easy to ignore. You become the woman who never pushes back, never speaks up, never demands more, and you start to wonder why your relationships feel one-sided, why people don't respect you, why your voice doesn't seem to matter. It's because you've trained the world to believe that your comfort is negotiable, that your needs are flexible, that your boundaries are optional. True kindness does not require self-sacrifice. It does not require you to put yourself last or to be endlessly accommodating. In fact, real kindness often requires the opposite. It requires the strength to say, this doesn't work for me. It requires the clarity to walk away from situations that drain you. It requires the boldness to set limits, to protect your time, your energy, your heart. That isn't selfish. That's self-respect. And self-respect is one of the highest forms of kindness, both to yourself and to others. When you confuse being nice with being kind, you set yourself up for burnout, resentment, and emotional exhaustion. You end up giving so much of yourself that there's nothing left. And the people who benefit from your niceness rarely offer anything in return. They've come to expect your compliance. They know you won't make demands. They know you'll keep the peace, even if it means setting yourself on fire to keep them warm. And what's worse is that the more you perform niceness, the more invisible your pain becomes. No one checks in on the nice woman. No one asks if she's okay. They assume she's fine because she's smiling, because she's agreeable, because she never complains. There's nothing kind about denying your truth. There's nothing kind about letting people walk all over you. There's nothing kind about abandoning your own voice just to avoid upsetting someone else. That's not kindness, that's fear. That's programming. That's a lifetime of being told that your worth is measured by how little trouble you cause. But you were not born to be pleasant. You were born to be powerful. You were born to speak truth, to create change, to set boundaries that protect your peace and your purpose. And that kind of strength will never come from being nice. It comes from knowing the difference. People respect what you tolerate. It's not about how much you give, how sweet you are, or how well you treat them. It's about what you allow. If you keep accepting disrespect, if you let people cross your boundaries without consequence, if you keep showing up for those who constantly disappoint you, you're teaching them exactly how to treat you. And they will treat you according to the standards you've set, not the standards you dream of. No one is going to respect you more than you respect yourself. When you tolerate being interrupted, dismissed, or taken for granted, you may think you're keeping the peace or avoiding drama. But what you're actually doing is showing others that your feelings and your voice don't require consideration. When you allow someone to talk over you or disregard your opinions, you're giving them silent permission to keep doing it. Over time, this becomes the pattern. You stop expecting to be heard. You stop expecting to be prioritized. You stop expecting to be respected. And the more you accept this behavior, the more they believe it's okay. Disrespect doesn't always look loud or aggressive. Sometimes it's subtle. It shows up as emotional unavailability, last-minute cancellations, unreturned messages, or lack of basic consideration. And each time you brush it off, make excuses, or tell yourself that's just how they are, you're lowering the bar. You're shrinking your worth to fit into someone else's lack of effort. But here's the thing. Your silence doesn't make you strong. Your tolerance doesn't make you noble. It makes you an easy target for people who want to take without giving. There's a false sense of virtue tied to enduring mistreatment. Society teaches women that patience, forgiveness, and endurance are signs of a good heart. So you keep justifying bad behavior, thinking that your love will eventually change them, that your consistency will eventually make them see your worth. But the hard truth is, the more you tolerate, the more they will test. Every time you let something slide, you're creating a new baseline for how little they can offer and still keep access to you. It's not that they don't know better, it's that they don't have to. People learn how to treat you based on what you accept. If you always pick up the phone for someone who never calls you first, they will never feel the need to reach out. If you continue making time for people who constantly cancel or flake on you, they'll never value your presence. If you keep giving second chances to those who show no signs of change, they will never respect your boundaries. Why should they? You've shown them that you'll stay no matter what. You've shown them that your love is unconditional, even in the absence of respect. Respect is not something you demand with words. It's something you command through action. It's in the way you walk away from what diminishes you. It's in the way you hold your silence when someone is fishing for a reaction. It's in the way you enforce boundaries without guilt or explanation. You don't earn respect by being more patient or more understanding. You earn it by showing people that there are consequences for mistreating you. And the first step to that is recognizing your role in the dynamic. It's easy to blame others for how they treat you, but at some point you have to hold yourself accountable. You have to ask yourself why you keep accepting so little, why you continue to show up for people who don't show up for you, why you keep hoping someone will suddenly change, even when their actions have repeatedly shown you who they are. The truth is, you may be afraid that raising your standards will leave you alone. But what's worse, being alone with your dignity or surrounded by people who constantly disrespect you? Tolerating disrespect doesn't just affect your relationships. It affects your self-worth. The more you allow, the more your confidence erodes. You start questioning if maybe this is all you deserve. You start convincing yourself that expecting more is asking too much. But deep down, you know that's a lie. You know your heart deserves to be handled with care, not convenience. And the only way to change the way people treat you is to change what you're willing to tolerate. Because people don't change when you lecture them. They change when they realize they no longer have access to you under the same conditions. You don't owe anyone your energy, not your time, not your explanations, not your emotional labor. Yet so many women carry the weight of obligation as if it's their birthright to be available to everyone at all times. You answer every message, you attend every event, you listen to every complaint, you carry everyone's burdens, and somewhere along the way you forget that your energy is sacred. You start believing that saying no is rude, that prioritizing your own peace is selfish, that walking away from people who drain you means you're heartless. But none of that is true. The truth is, you have the right to protect your energy the same way you protect your home. You don't let just anyone walk through your front door. Why let them into your mind, your time, your spirit? There is a deep emotional cost to being constantly accessible. You wake up tired, not because you didn't sleep enough, but because your soul is fatigued. Your heart is heavy from carrying other people's problems. Your mind cluttered with the noise of their chaos. You try to be everything to everyone, and in doing so, you leave nothing for yourself. You're emotionally bankrupt, but you keep extending credit, showing up for people who would never do the same for you. And the worst part is, you call this kindness, you call it being supportive, but what it really is self-abandonment in disguise. People will take and take until you have nothing left if you keep showing up without boundaries. They will expect your time, your empathy, your understanding, even when they give you nothing in return. And the more you give, the more they expect. It's never enough. You think that being available makes you valuable, but it only makes you more accessible for misuse. You're not being appreciated. You're being used subtly and consistently, because the truth is, people will rarely say no to free energy. They will keep calling, keep complaining, keep asking, because they know you'll always pick up. They know you'll always say yes. But just because someone has access to you doesn't mean they have a right to you. You have the power to choose where your energy goes. You have the power to decide who gets your time, who gets your attention, who gets to be close to you. This isn't arrogance. It's discernment. It's wisdom. It's self-preservation. And it's necessary because your energy is your life force. It fuels your purpose, your growth, your joy. If you keep giving it away to people who drain you, there will be nothing left for the things that actually matter to you. The idea that women should be endlessly giving is a lie rooted in control. It's a way to keep you busy tending to everyone else's needs so that you never focus on your own. It keeps you overworked, overwhelmed, and underappreciated. And every time you say yes out of guilt instead of genuine willingness, you are reinforcing that lie. You're telling yourself that your comfort doesn't matter, that your peace is disposable, that your limits can be negotiated. But the reality is, no one can respect your boundaries if you never enforce them. No one can value your time if you're always giving it away like it's worthless. You are not a lifeline for people who refuse to swim. You are not responsible for fixing everyone, saving everyone, listening to every complaint, or absorbing every emotion that's thrown at you. It is not your job to be constantly available just because you have a good heart. A good heart still needs rest. A good heart still needs space. And a good heart should be protected, not exploited. Learning to say no without guilt is one of the most powerful things you can do for yourself. It doesn't make you mean. It doesn't make you cold. It makes you conscious of your worth. It means you are no longer willing to run on empty while others stay full. It means you are choosing peace over pressure, clarity over chaos, and purpose over people-pleasing. And when you make that choice consistently, you begin to attract people who honor it, people who don't just take from your energy, but who pour back into it. Because you weren't meant to be drained, you were meant to thrive. And thriving requires boundaries, not endless availability. Being too nice often leads you to confuse tolerance with strength. But the truth is, there is nothing strong about ignoring red flags. In fact, ignoring red flags is one of the most dangerous habits you can develop because it teaches you to normalize pain, disrespect, and emotional instability. Every time you look away from the warning signs, you teach yourself to be comfortable in discomfort. You tell yourself it's not a big deal, that it will get better, that maybe you're just overreacting. But deep down, you know the truth. You just don't want to face it because facing it would mean doing something hard, setting boundaries, having difficult conversations, walking away, or disappointing someone who benefits from your silence. Red flags don't always scream. Sometimes they whisper. They show up in the little things, a dismissive tone, a lack of follow-through, emotional inconsistency, small lies, or passive aggression. But instead of confronting these things, you rationalize them. You say no one's perfect, or they're just stressed, or it's not that serious. You tell yourself you're being understanding, that you're showing grace, but grace without discernment is self-sabotage. It's one thing to be compassionate, it's another to be blind. And too many women have been conditioned to ignore their intuition in the name of being nice. That inner voice that nudges you when something feels off is not paranoid, it's protective. But being too nice convinces you to silence that voice. You stop trusting yourself. You start second guessing your gut. You allow people to stay in your life even when they've shown you they don't deserve a front row seat. You mistake your anxiety for attachment. You confuse your discomfort for loyalty. And in the process, you betray yourself because ignoring red flags doesn't make them disappear. It just gives them more time to grow. What starts as a small boundary crossed becomes a pattern of disrespect. What seems like a one-time mistake becomes emotional manipulation. What you thought you could tolerate becomes the very thing that breaks you later. The cost of ignoring red flags is not just emotional, it's spiritual. You begin to lose your sense of peace. Your spirit becomes restless. You feel drained around certain people, but you keep showing up anyway, hoping they'll change, hoping it'll feel different next time. But every time you ignore what you know to be true, you shrink a little more. You silence yourself a little more. You abandon your worth, your wisdom, and your well-being. I mean, that's not noble. That's destructive. That's not kindness. That's fear. Fear of being alone, fear of being judged, fear of not being enough. What you allow is what will continue. People do not change because you ignore their bad behavior. They change when they realize you're no longer willing to tolerate it. And sometimes that means removing yourself before the damage becomes too deep. But walking away doesn't make you bitter. It makes you wise. It means you've decided that your peace matters more than someone else's potential, that you're not going to gamble your future emotional health on someone's unwillingness to grow, that you're no longer going to make excuses for actions that hurt you. Recognizing red flags doesn't make you judgmental. It makes you aware, and awareness is power. It's what helps you protect yourself from cycles that keep you stuck. It's what helps you attract relationships rooted in mutual respect, honesty, and emotional safety. But you can't step into that kind of life if you keep excusing the behavior that breaks you. You can't find peace if you keep inviting chaos to stay. The truth is, some people rely on your silence. They rely on your willingness to overlook, to forgive too quickly, to avoid confrontation. And the longer you tolerate it, the more they believe they're entitled to your forgiveness. But your kindness should never come at the cost of your clarity. If something feels wrong, it probably is. And if someone shows you who they are, believe them. Not after the third or fourth time, but the first. Because red flags aren't meant to be decorated. They're meant to be noticed. They're not invitations to prove your loyalty. They're warnings to protect your peace. And when you start honoring those warnings, you stop inviting pain disguised as love. People-pleasing is a silent prison. You walk around with a smile on your face, doing everything you can to make others happy, hoping that in return you'll feel accepted, loved, and appreciated. But the truth is, the more you sacrifice your own needs to meet someone else's expectations, the more invisible you become to yourself. You start living a life that's not truly yours, a life shaped by fear of rejection, fear of conflict, and fear of not being enough. Deep inside, You're exhausted, you're overwhelmed, but you keep saying yes because you've been conditioned to believe that your worth is tied to how useful, agreeable, or selfless you are. The need to please is often born from childhood patterns, moments where love and approval were only given when you behaved a certain way. So you learned early on that being good meant putting others first. You learned that peace was maintained by avoiding conflict, that harmony came from being agreeable, and that safety meant keeping others happy, even at your own expense. Over time, this turned into a reflex. You stopped checking in with yourself. You stopped asking, what do I want or what do I need? Because it was always about someone else, their mood, their comfort, their validation. What people don't tell you is that people-pleasing is actually a form of manipulation. It's not malicious, but it is rooted in fear and control. You're not just being kind, you're managing people's perception of you. You're hoping that by never rocking the boat, by always being helpful, they'll never leave, that they'll see your worth and finally give you what you've been craving: consistency, appreciation, loyalty. But it rarely works that way because the people you bend over backward for usually come to expect that version of you. They start seeing your constant sacrifice as standard behavior. And the moment you try to set a boundary or say no, they get angry or confused, not because you did anything wrong, but because you've trained them to believe that your needs don't matter. The cost of people-pleasing is massive. You lose touch with your own identity. You agree to things you don't believe in. You say yes when your soul is screaming no. You allow disrespect, tolerate emotional exhaustion, and suppress your own opinions just to avoid the discomfort of disappointing others. But every time you abandon yourself in favor of someone else's approval, you chip away at your own power. You make yourself smaller, quieter, more agreeable, and eventually you don't even recognize the person in the mirror. You've become a reflection of what others want, not who you truly are. It's painful because deep down you think being selfless will make people love you more. But real love doesn't require self-betrayal. Real love respects your boundaries. It doesn't demand that you be everything to everyone. It doesn't guilt you into silence. It doesn't shame you for saying no. And if someone only stays because you're constantly sacrificing your own well-being to keep them happy, that's not love. It's dependent. And it's not your responsibility to carry other people's emotional loads at the expense of your own peace. The freedom you seek won't come from being liked by everyone. It will come from being respected by yourself. And that means being honest. It means saying what you actually feel, doing what actually aligns with your values, and choosing yourself even when it makes other people uncomfortable. It means accepting that not everyone will understand you, approve of you, or agree with you, and being okay with that. Because the moment you stop chasing approval, you start reclaiming your authenticity. You start making choices that honor your spirit, and that's where real peace lives. You are not here to be liked by everyone. You're here to live fully, honestly, and freely. That can't happen if you're constantly molding yourself to meet someone else's expectations. You can't be powerful and pleasing at the same time. You can't be authentic and agreeable in every situation. You have to choose your comfort or your truth, your peace or their opinion. Because the more you say yes just to keep others happy, the more you say no to yourself. And that's a trade no woman should keep making. There's a quiet kind of damage that happens when you allow disrespect to go unchecked. It's not always loud or dramatic. Sometimes it's subtle. A sarcastic comment, a dismissive tone, a moment when someone talks over you or mocks your boundaries like they're a joke, and you let it slide. Maybe you laugh it off. Maybe you stay silent. Maybe you tell yourself it's not worth making a big deal over. But what you don't realize in that moment is that silence in the face of disrespect sends a message, not just to them, but to yourself. It says, this is okay. I'm okay with being treated like this. And the more you accept it, the more it becomes your norm. Too often, women are taught that standing up for themselves is rude or unkind. You're taught to be easygoing, to let things go, to choose peace over confrontation. But real peace doesn't come from avoiding conflict. It comes from standing in your truth. Every time you tolerate being disrespected, you shrink a little. You teach people how to treat you by what you allow, what you respond to, and what you stay silent about. And over time, if you keep letting it slide, you begin to believe that this is just how relationships are supposed to be, that maybe expecting respect is too much, that maybe you're too sensitive, too emotional, too difficult. But you're not. You're not asking for too much. You're asking for the bare minimum, basic human respect. You're asking to be spoken to with dignity, to have your boundaries honored, to not be made to feel small or invisible. And if someone can't give you that, then they don't deserve your energy, your time, or your presence. Because respect is not optional. It's not a favor. It's the foundation of every healthy relationship. And if that foundation isn't there, nothing else matters. Allowing disrespect creates emotional confusion. You start to feel anxious around certain people, but you can't quite explain why. You feel drained after conversations that should be simple. You replay moments in your mind, wondering if you were overreacting or imagining things. That's what consistent disrespect does. It makes you question your own reality. It erodes your confidence. It makes you second guess your instinct. And when you're constantly questioning yourself, you lose the clarity and courage to walk away from what's hurting you. Sometimes the people who disrespect you the most are the ones closest to you: partners, friends, family members. And that makes it harder to draw a line. You don't want to be harsh. You don't want to lose people. But keeping people in your life who don't respect you is far more damaging than letting them go. You don't need to scream or fight to make your boundaries known. Sometimes the most powerful thing you can do is simply stop participating, stop explaining yourself, stop trying to prove your worth to people committed to misunderstanding you. Just walk away, disengage, protect your space. You can be kind and still have boundaries. You can be compassionate and still refuse to be a doormat. There is nothing empowering about enduring disrespect in silence. Empowerment comes from knowing your worth so deeply that you won't let anyone treat you less than. And once you begin to stand up for yourself, you'll notice something incredible. Disrespectful people will start to fall away. They won't know how to handle the new version of you who speaks up, who says no, who doesn't play small to keep the peace. And that's okay. Let them go. The people who truly value you will never require you to shrink in order to be loved. You weren't put on this earth to tolerate people who chip away at your spirit. You weren't meant to be quiet just to make others comfortable. You were meant to take up space, to speak your truth, to walk with your head held high. The moment you stop allowing disrespect is the moment you start reclaiming your power. Because every time you let someone talk down to you, disregard your boundaries, or diminish your presence, and you say nothing, you lose a little bit of yourself. But every time you speak up, every time you choose to walk away from what no longer honors you, you get that piece of yourself back. And eventually you remember who you were before you forgot what you deserved. Over-explaining is one of the clearest signs that you feel the need to justify your existence, your choices, and your boundaries to people who haven't earned that level of access to you. It comes from a deep-rooted insecurity that tells you your words need validation to be accepted, that your actions must be fully explained in order to be understood, and that saying no isn't enough unless it's followed by a carefully detailed excuse. But the truth is, the constant need to explain yourself is a trauma response. It's what happens when you've spent too long trying to earn approval, survive criticism, and stay safe in unpredictable environments. Somewhere along the way, you learned that being understood equaled being safe. And so you started pouring out long-winded explanations, hoping they would protect you from judgment, disappointment, or rejection. But what over-explaining actually does is strip you of your power. It sends a message to others that you're unsure of yourself, that you need permission to feel what you feel or do what you do. It opens the door for manipulation, especially with people who thrive on control. When you feel compelled to explain every decision, you invite others to dissect your reasoning, question your motives, and chip away at your confidence. The more you explain, the more you expose your vulnerabilities to people who may not have your best interests at heart. And in doing so, you slowly hand over the steering wheel of your life to other people's opinions. You don't owe anyone an explanation for prioritizing your peace. You don't need to defend your boundaries. You don't need to lay out a spreadsheet of reasons for why you don't want to go out, don't want to engage, or don't feel comfortable in a certain situation. A simple no is a full sentence. I'm not available is complete. This doesn't work for me is enough. But because women in particular are conditioned to be polite, agreeable, and accommodating, it can feel uncomfortable at first to say less. It can feel like you're being cold or rude. But you're not being rude. You're being rooted. Rooted in your truth, rooted in your values, rooted in the belief that your decisions don't require external validation. There is a difference between communicating clearly and over-explaining out of fear. When you communicate clearly, you express your needs with confidence and firmness. When you over-explain, you're often operating from anxiety, hoping that if you just say enough, if you give the right context, the other person will finally accept what you've said. But people who respect you don't need endless explanations to respect your choices. And people who don't respect you won't care how much you explain. They'll keep pushing, questioning, and making you feel like your truth isn't enough. Learning to stop over-explaining requires practice. It means getting comfortable with silence after you set a boundary. It means allowing others to be disappointed or confused without feeling the need to fix their feelings. It means reminding yourself that you're not responsible for how others receive your truth. You're only responsible for being honest. You have to learn to sit in the discomfort of not being liked or agreed with all the time, because trying to keep everyone happy by explaining yourself into exhaustion is a race you'll never win, and the cost is your own mental and emotional clarity. You weren't created to convince people of your worth. You were created to live in alignment with your soul. That means sometimes walking away without explanation. That means choosing peace over pleasing. That means recognizing when a conversation is no longer about understanding, it's about control, and having the courage to stop engaging. Over-explaining is a habit that comes from wounds, but it can be unlearned through awareness and intention. Every time you feel the urge to justify your boundary, pause and ask yourself, why do I feel the need to be understood here? If the answer is fear, insecurity, or guilt, that's your cue to speak less and stand firmer. Freedom comes when you no longer feel the need to narrate your every move, when you realize that your choices, your boundaries, and your truth are valid, whether someone agrees with them or not. You're not here to perform. You're not here to be approved of. You're here to be free. And freedom begins the moment you stop asking for permission and start owning your voice without apology. Self-sabotage is one of the most insidious forms of self-doubt that many women face, and it often goes unnoticed until it has already taken root deep within your psyche. It's the quiet voice inside that tells you that you're not good enough, that you don't deserve success, or that you're just not capable of achieving the life you dream of. Self-sabotage doesn't always look like outright failure. In fact, it's often disguised as procrastination, perfectionism, self-doubt, or even taking on too much at once. It's the behaviors, the thoughts, and the actions that undermine your own potential because deep down, you believe that you aren't worthy of the success, happiness, or love that you crave. You tell yourself that something bad will inevitably happen or that you'll fail. And so you set yourself up to fail before you even have a chance to succeed. This pattern can stem from past experiences, such as childhood trauma, or from societal conditioning that teaches you to stay small, to avoid stepping into your power, or to wait for permission to shine. Sometimes it's rooted in a fear of success itself, the fear that once you achieve your goals, everything will change and you'll no longer be able to manage the expectations or responsibilities that come with success. It's the belief that if you succeed, you'll become too visible, too vulnerable, or too exposed. And that's a scary thought for someone who's been taught to stay in the background, to blend in, and to not rock the boat. But the truth is, self-sabotage isn't something that happens to you. It's something you unconsciously allow. It's an automatic response to the underlying belief that you're not enough. Every time you don't take that opportunity, every time you procrastinate or second guess your ideas, every time you talk yourself out of doing something great because you're afraid of failing, you're reinforcing the idea that you don't deserve more. And it's a vicious cycle. The more you sabotage your own progress, the more you believe that you're incapable or unworthy, and the more you continue to hold yourself back. This cycle is often perpetuated by the need for perfectionism. You feel that if things aren't perfect, they're not worth doing at all. You wait for the right moment, for everything to align perfectly. But the truth is that perfect moments don't exist. There's always something that could go wrong, something that could be better, something you could have done differently. And yet, if you wait for perfect conditions, you'll find yourself constantly stuck in indecision, afraid to take that first step. It's easier to hold on to the comfort of what if than to confront the fear of the unknown. But in reality, the longer you stay in the realm of what if, the longer you stay stuck in a life of possibilities that will never be actualized. The key to breaking free from self-sabotage is recognizing that it's a direct reflection of how you feel about yourself. When you believe that you don't deserve success or that you're not capable of reaching your goals, you create roadblocks that prevent you from moving forward. You make excuses, you delay action, you talk yourself out of things. And each time you do, you confirm your fears. But the moment you start believing that you are worthy of success, worthy of love, worthy of peace, is the moment that self-sabotage loses its power. Changing the pattern of self-sabotage requires a shift in mindset. You need to begin treating yourself with the same kindness, encouragement, and compassion that you'd offer to someone else. When you make a mistake, don't berate yourself or call yourself a failure. Instead, acknowledge the lesson, learn from it, and move forward with a sense of purpose. Understand that perfection isn't the goal, progress is. And every step you take, no matter how small, brings you closer to your true potential. You also need to recognize when you're falling into the trap of overthinking or procrastination. Often, self-sabotage manifests as a way to avoid discomfort. Whether that discomfort comes from fear of failure, fear of rejection, or fear of success itself. But every moment you spend doubting yourself is a moment you're not moving forward. Instead of asking yourself, what if I fail? Start asking, what if I succeed? Shift your focus from the potential of failure to the possibilities of success. Breaking the cycle of self-sabotage doesn't mean eliminating fear altogether. Fear will always be there, but it's what you choose to do with it that matters. You can use fear as a motivator, as a signal that you're about to do something significant, something that will push you out of your comfort zone. Embrace the discomfort of growth, because that's where the magic happens. The more you step into your fears, the more you prove to yourself that you're capable of overcoming them. And as you start to succeed, even in small ways, you'll build momentum, and self-sabotage will no longer have a hold on you. The fear of rejection is a deep, instinctual fear that all humans experience in varying degrees. But for many women, it becomes a paralyzing force that dictates their actions, decisions, and self-worth. This fear doesn't just show up in romantic relationships. It's present in friendships, professional settings, family dynamics, and social circles. It manifests in the need for constant validation, in saying yes when you really want to say no, in shrinking yourself to fit others' expectations, and in silencing your voice to avoid the discomfort of someone disagreeing with you. This fear is rooted in the belief that being rejected means being unworthy, unlovable, or inadequate. It's an emotional wound that ties your sense of value to external approval. And it's powerful because it's often invisible to both you and the people around you. When you fear rejection, you start to shape your identity around the need for acceptance. You become hyper aware of how others perceive you, constantly adjusting, second guessing, and altering your actions to maintain harmony and avoid conflict. The problem with this is that it robs you of your authenticity. You begin to suppress your true feelings, desires, and aspirations, all in the name of keeping others happy. You live in a constant state of people-pleasing, hoping that if you're always good enough in other people's eyes, they won't turn away from you. But what you fail to realize is that this type of behavior often leads to a deeper sense of isolation and resentment because you're not being your true self. You're not attracting the people who truly align with you. You're attracting those who only accept a version of you that fits their needs. And this never leads to fulfilling relationships. One of the most damaging aspects of the fear of rejection is that it keeps you stuck in situations that aren't serving you, whether it's a job you hate, a friendship that drains you, or a relationship that diminishes your value. Fear of rejection can trap you in toxic environments. You avoid making necessary changes or setting boundaries because you're afraid of being seen as difficult, demanding, or ungrateful. So you stay in unhealthy situations, convincing yourself that the pain of rejection is worse than the pain of staying stuck. But the longer you stay in a situation where you feel undervalued or unappreciated, the more you erode your self-esteem. The fear of rejection, when left unchecked, slowly eats away at your confidence, making you question your worth and causing you to settle for less than you deserve. What's important to understand is that rejection is not the end of your worth. Rejection is not a reflection of who you are, but rather a reflection of someone else's preferences, limitations, or misalignment with you. It's not a personal attack on your value. It's a redirection. Every rejection is an opportunity for you to clarify what you want, to refine your boundaries, and to step closer to the people, opportunities, and experiences that truly align with your purpose. Rejection is often a form of protection, guiding you away from situations that would drain your energy or hold you back from your true potential. To overcome the fear of rejection, you must begin to unhook your sense of worth from external approval. Your value is not determined by someone's acceptance or approval of you. It is inherent within you, no matter who validates it or who doesn't. The first step in overcoming this fear is to recognize that your worth is constant, regardless of external circumstances. You need to remind yourself that you are worthy simply because you exist, not because you've met someone else's expectations or desires. Another way to dismantle the fear of rejection is to practice embracing discomfort. Rejection by nature is uncomfortable. It challenges your sense of security and tests your resilience, but rather than avoiding or running from this discomfort, lean into it. Every time you face the fear of rejection and push through it, you reinforce your belief in yourself. You start to see that rejection doesn't break you, it builds your strength. It's through these moments of discomfort that you learn to stand firm in your truth and hold your boundaries, even when others disagree with you or turn away. The more you expose yourself to rejection, the more you realize that it has no power over you. It becomes just another experience, one that doesn't diminish you, but teaches you. You also have to shift your focus from pleasing others to pleasing yourself. When you place your energy on being true to yourself and your values, you stop needing validation from people who don't truly understand you or care for the real you. You start attracting those who see your authenticity and appreciate it. And even if you do face rejection from these people, you'll have the confidence to let it roll off your back, knowing that their rejection isn't about your worth. It's simply about compatibility. The right people will always align with your energy, your goals, and your values. Fear of rejection is something that every woman will face at some point, but it doesn't have to control your life. Once you learn to separate your worth from the opinions of others, you become liberated. You become free to be yourself, to follow your own path, and to choose relationships and opportunities that genuinely support you. Rejection will always sting, but it no longer has to define you. You are bigger, stronger, and more valuable than any rejection you might face. The world doesn't need more nice women. It needs brave women. Women who speak up, women who walk away, women who refuse to settle, women who love without losing themselves, women who know that boundaries are a form of love for self. So stop being the nice woman. Start being the real one and watch your world transform.